So I don't know how many of you guys have been following this, but there were some stories that came out over the weekend which explained some changes that they're making in Georgia to the election process. I'm here to tell you to be afraid, because the stuff that they're doing, it's not exactly hidden. It's not exactly a mystery. The whole point of these moves that they're making is to attempt to rig it up front for Trump, to stack the deck in his favor. So, what am I referring to? Well, let's watch this interview where they break it down, and then I'll tell you more about what their plan is. Here we go.
Laying the results in Georgia hand the presidency to Trump.
Well, hey, Jonathan, great to see you again. So what would happen is that Georgia would not certify its electoral college votes in time. No candidate would get a majority in the electoral college as a result.
So I should be clear. What they're referring to here is the Georgia Election Board changed the certification process where they say it has to be hand counted. They said it has to be hand counted. Now, the reason why that is kind of terrifying is it's going to delay the time frame where we get our answer, right? We're going to get the answer much later than we normally would, days later, in fact. And that actually opens up more of an opportunity for potential fraud or trickery or all sorts of problems, right? And so, you know, I'm sure you want to know, I want to know, we all want to know on election night, hey, let's get this result and let's get it now. They're delaying the process and with the potential of maybe gumming up the works. Okay, here we go.
That would then throw the election to the House of Representatives, which has not happened since 1824. And then what would happen is the House would vote, but it wouldn't be a majority of members of the House voting. It would be a majority of state delegations where Republicans would have an advantage. And that's really the nightmare scenario here. Is you could have a presidential candidate who loses the popular vote, who does not win a majority of the Electoral College, but who could then be selected by House Republicans who don't even represent a majority of that body. And it might be a far-fetched scenario, but under the Constitution, it is a possible one.
Right. It is a possible one. If I learned anything after 4 years of Donald Trump in the White House, is if you can imagine it, it could possibly happen. So everyone needs to keep their imaginations open and broad. You know, the Georgia Attorney General and Secretary of State say they don't think the Election Board's decision can stand up to legal challenge. What do you make of that? Could this be over? Could this decision, but also a raft of their other decisions, be overturned?
Yes, I think it could very likely be blocked in Georgia law because, listen, when the Republican Secretary of State weighs in ahead of time against these kind of claims, you know how serious it is. There have been a series of changes passed by the MAGA Georgia State Board of Election now, not just hand counting ballots, but saying that counties can undertake a reasonable inquiry before certifying elections without specifying.
Okay, I should be clear again. Trump, in one of his rallies the other day, said he praised 3 of the 5 people on the Georgia Election Board. 3 of them are hardcore MAGA, okay? And he called them out by name and said they're doing an amazing job. Why did he say that? Because they're doing the stuff he wants them to do to potentially be able to, at the last minute, gum up the works, flip the result, delay the process, whatever they got to do in order to give him the W, even if he doesn't win on the number of votes.
There have been a series of changes passed by the MAGA Georgia State Board of Election now, not just hand counting ballots, but saying that counties can undertake a reasonable inquiry before certifying elections without specifying what that inquiry is, allowing them access to all election-related documentation. And it feels like Georgia Republicans are laying the groundwork not to certify the election if a Democrat wins and trying to make certification optional as opposed to mandatory. So they're really redefining what Georgia law requires. And I think that's going to put them in a difficult position with the courts. But what Trump is trying to do is just create chaos and uncertainty here so he can weaponize it, just like he tried to weaponize any kind of delay in counting the ballots or any kind of process that takes a little bit longer in counting the ballots in 2020. Ironically, the new hand counting rule is going to do exactly that. It's going to make it longer to count ballots, and then Trump's going to turn around and say, hey, there's something wrong because it's taking longer to count ballots, even though his side pushed for those rules.
Yes, he's exactly right. That's exactly what's going to happen. Guys, remember, you can go back and watch on 2020 election night. I was on Rogan's show, and I told everybody before they even got to counting the votes, I told everybody, I need you to understand, a very likely scenario that can unfold is what's called the red mirage. The red mirage is they're going to count the votes on election day first, the ones that came in on election day, the ones who voted on election day. They count those ballots first, and it's going to look like Trump is winning by a comfortable margin. because he was shitting on mail-in voting and early voting and all that sort of stuff and saying you got to vote on election day. So his people show up on election day, they vote for him, they count those ballots first. It looks like he's winning. Then you're going to get all the mail-in ballots that come after the fact. And there, the Democrats are going to have a massive advantage, 2-1, 3-1, whatever it might be. And it's going to look like Trump's leading by a lot. And then, oh, would you look at that? Biden surges and ended up taking it if he indeed wins. I said before the votes were counted, this is a scenario that is possible, if not likely. And that's exactly what happened. And then MAGA turns around and says, we had vote dumps in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. They rigged it. We were winning comfortably. And then at the end, they flipped the result and they cheated and they lied. And it's like, no, we knew this was going to happen. We knew the way they counted the votes that this was likely to unfold. But they used it as evidence of, no, there's something bad going on here. And he's pointing out the Republicans are going to delay the process. And then when the process is delayed, they're going to say, see, there's something sketchy going on here. Oh my God, all the ingredients are there, man. All the ingredients are there for this to be a nightmare.
Let me get you on one more thing before we have to let you go in 30 seconds. Nebraska. And Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina going to Nebraska and at the urging also of Donald Trump, calling on Nebraska to go to a winner-take-all format for its electoral votes. Because in Nebraska, there's that one district where the electoral vote can go another way. Real quickly, tell us why what they're trying to do is equally important to pay attention to.
Well, it's so concerning because if that one Nebraska vote goes to Trump instead, the election could be tied 269 to 269 if Harris wins those blue wall states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. That could also throw the election to the House. So the Electoral College already systematically benefits Republicans, and now they're trying to rig it further for the GOP. And this is just yet another example of them trying to rig the rules at the 11th hour and upend Democratic norms when it feels like their side's not winning fair and square.
So what they do is what they're accusing Democrats of doing, they're guilty of doing. You know, we saw this with Ken Paxton. He was on Steve Bannon's show, and he said, if I didn't wage these 7 lawsuits to throw out these mail-in ballots in Texas, Biden would have won Texas. That's what he said. He's admitting, I stole the election from Biden in Texas. What they accuse others of doing, they're guilty of doing. Guys, there are 70 election-denying Republicans who are on these boards in swing states across the country. I need you to understand how dire that is, and I need you to understand that Democrats need to lawyer up because this is what Republicans are doing to lay the groundwork beforehand. Okay? We don't want to see another repeat of the 2000 election, for example. We want to make sure that whoever actually wins, and the process is correct. But no, they're trying to rig it up front as they ironically scream that as Democrats, they're rigging it. It's a terrible place to be in. The Nebraska thing is slimy and weaselly, and it's very naked right in front of us what they're doing. And then the Georgia stuff is absolutely terrifying. So, and that will probably delay us knowing what the result is. And then the more it's delayed, the more they're going to say, hey, this is fishy and something's going on. And he's going to whip his people up just like he did last time. You know, Trump came out recently and said, oh, I'm not going to run again in 2028 if I lose. He was answering a question and he said that. But we're all forgetting, even if he does lose, he's going to deny that he lost again, right? And Lord only knows what kind of chaos we can be thrust into as a result of that. So, not good news, man. They are laying the groundwork, and it is not subtle. It is very clear, and everybody should be against it. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.